So the Dricus du Plessis-Israel Adesanya beef is going absolutely nowhere. In fact, I think it's going to ramp up as time goes on. We have a lot of the mainstream shills like Luke Thomas and even Dana himself dismissing this and trying to brush it under the rug really and say, listen, this is funny. This is just not really too much of a thing. These are fighters. They're going to do what they have to do. But there is certainly a lot more at play with this story for a lot more people. So going through the MMA journalists' reactions to this Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya story, I come across Luke Thomas. I jump into a live stream the other day. I watched the whole thing through and I take notes, and I can't believe some of the stuff he's saying. You know, he goes off on QAnon, Trump, Colby, everyone's racist, everyone's vile, everyone's abhorrent. But before we get to all that, we're going to start with the Dricus du Plessis stuff. And in terms of what he thinks of this whole story and the contention between these two Africans is actually quite interesting. Let's see what he says.
This is hilarious. There's more of this. I didn't realize this was this contentious. I just thought the Izzy thing with Dricus was funny. I honestly didn't think anything more than that. I thought it's objectively hilarious. It's
objectively hilarious that Israel Adesanya turned what was going to be this organic beef between two fighters into a complete and utter politicalized racial issue. He finds it hilarious because, to be honest with you, he's frightened of it as well, because he knows that Israel is on the wrong side of this thing and it's looking absolutely terrible for him and for his supporters. But we can see where this guy's going to go with it. Trust me, it gets a lot more interesting.
You know, you've got this black dude like in this white guy's face just constantly calling him the N-word.
Did you see the way he did that? Did you see? He's frightened to say the word black dude. He went, you got this black dude in this white guy's face saying the N-word. What?
It's like, you know, it's inherently bizarre. It's funny.
Inherently bizarre and funny. You can tell that he's extremely uptight about this whole situation. He doesn't like it one little bit because it's exposing Israel for what he is, and I believe, and most of the people that have watched what has transpired over the last few weeks believe, is that he's a racist. Simple as that. But this is not breaking news. Anti-white rhetoric is exponentially growing day by day, and it's fueled by guys like him who are within a cult. These guys are balls deep in a cult. He thinks that anyone who disagrees with him, the likes of a Bryce Mitchell or a Sean Strickland, Colby Covington, there's not very many that have the guts to come out and say, you know what, I don't agree with the propaganda that's been forced down my throat every day. I'm going to actually have my own opinion, critically think, do my own research. He doesn't want that. That sort of behavior is dangerous for people like him because he believes you are stupid. People like him expect you to be stupid. They expect you to buy the narrative and do exactly what everyone else is doing. And when you break free of that, you step outside of that, that's a threat. That's a threat to the power system for these people because they are all in power. Beyond no illusion, all these guys are in power because of the force of the indoctrination. And it's very evident.
Again, I'm in no position to speak for the whites either. But to the extent that there is any kind of conversation to be had, I think that they want to be seen as like so against discrimination that they're even like the version of the term that at least among African Americans can be circulated in a way that's sort of like, you know, a good thing or you know, a term of understanding between them. Anyway,
he's stumbling all over himself. The fact of the matter is, the black Americans use the N-word, which I hate even using the term N-word because it doesn't mean anything. This is not an African term. This is not a term that was used when the Nigerians were selling slaves to the European slave traders, when Israel's ancestors were selling black people to white people. This is not a term that was used back then. This is an Americanized thing, and he's frightened to say it because he believes it holds power. Why does he believe it holds power? Because he was told it holds all this power. And all the low IQ people that garnish the energy to say you can't say this word, it's sad. Very, very sad. And this guy is squirming all over the place at the idea of using N-word, at the idea of using black, at the idea of using racism. This guy's a joke.
Just tossing and turning all night. How am I going to sleep through the night knowing that Izzy called DDP the N-word 6? I mean, it's just, you know, I'm going to sleep just fine. I think most of you will as well.
He's going to sleep just fine, and most of you as well. What if the roles were reversed here and it was DDP who used the N-word 6 times? Would you sleep just fine? Would you sneer? Would you kind of sit back in your chair and kind of slink around jokingly and laughingly like a little fucking rat? I don't think you would. I think that we'd be up in arms. I think DDP would be gone out of the UFC. I think Dana would have been frothing at the mouth at, we need to do better. We need to do better as people, as an organization. I think it'd be a completely and utterly different story. Why is it allowed to go the other way? Why is it allowed to go the other way? And it wasn't just the N-word. It was him calling Dricus du Plessis a racial slur repeatedly on a live stream a few weeks ago. And Ariel and this guy heard it and thought, whatever. It's against a white person, doesn't matter. We'll jump to this part here. It's an interesting question.
Tori says, Colby being an openly racist persona skyrocketed him and no one bats an eye and can see it as entertainment and selling the fight. Just interesting. Right. Colby, I appreciate that, Tori. Colby has definitely just said outrageous, horrible shit.
Just outrageous, horrible shit. Okay, let's hear it.
Whether this is a coherent difference or not, you can decide.
First of all, I'd like to talk about the coherence in this guy. He doesn't have any. He's got kind of an ideological incoherence. He has been told and programmed to think something over and over again, lacking the idea of an original thought. And he projects this onto his audience. And he projects this onto the UFC. And I've heard him in other interviews, especially after the Bryce Mitchell interview, which I thought was absolutely appalling. And he got everything 100% completely wrong with that entire interview. He's done it on a number of different massive issues. Ones that we're not even allowed to talk about. And even the fact that we're not allowed to talk about them tells us the story of his incoherent ideology, because it's that ideology that bans free speech. And he sneers and he laughs about it. Stuff that we're not allowed to talk about, he drummed on about ad nauseum over and over again with complete and utter confidence and the arrogance of being 100% right.
Reality is this: there are just people in this society who do not believe that they have a role to play in public health. They don't. Whether it is the mask they complained about, when it was the lockdown they complained about, when it was social distancing they complained about it, and now it's the vaccine they're complaining about it. Basically, these are people who do not want to do anything about it. And the reality is that's just not going to work. People, you have got to understand there is no other door. There is no other choice. There is no other solution. There is one. We either get herd immunity and you can maybe be that last straggler that doesn't get the vaccine, or more commonly, you've got to get the vaccine. It is safe. It is legal. It is effective. It will work. It is our only path forward.
And in the end, he was 100% completely and utterly wrong. Let's go on.
Between saying something that is vile and then actually saying the N-word.
So there's a difference between saying something that's completely and utterly vile, like Brazil, you're a dump, which is pretty much true. It's a third world country. They're not the best. There's loads of dumps here in Ireland, and there's even more dumps all across America. Just look at Detroit, look at San Francisco, look at Philadelphia, look at all these drug-ridden areas of downtowns all across America, thanks to this guy's politics. But saying something that's objectively true is vile, and saying the N-word, if you're black and racist like Israel Adesanya 6 times, that's okay.
And I feel like if you actually came out and said the N-word and you look like me,
a fucking idiot is what you look like.
And you like made it a point to drive it home. And now you're like, well, Mike Perry did it. But right, Mike Perry didn't do it on the UFC championship stage.
Mike Perry's a legend.
Where these guys are going to be in ESPN, where you have to do media around this. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like Mike Perry didn't draw the attention of the wider ESPN punditry class.
Ramblings of a madman. That's what we've got here. We'll jump forward here. I have this time coded.
Right? I mean, this is all pragmatic. This is like no one taking a stand for the right thing in any direction. But
I hate being the guy that says, what if the roles were reversed? We hear that a lot, especially with the Dricus and Israel Adesanya shit over the last few weeks. We hear people saying, can you imagine if a white person said this? And this goes across the board. It's not just MMA. It's actually in all sports. It's all media, all entertainment. Can you imagine if a white person said this? So we've got to the stage where we have an inversion of racism. But this one is applauded by the people that are in charge and promoted. And again, this is premeditated. 100% plan.
Everyone should lighten the fuck up. I don't think in the broader sense what Izzy did is some kind of thought crime or verbal crime. It's verbally hilarious. It's bizarre and weird and uncomfortable and not necessarily the prettiest thing, but innocuous in the end.
Everyone should lighten the fuck up with this situation. Now, this is something that we're going to see rolled out across the board in the coming weeks, where the mainstream are going to try to diffuse this situation. Israel seems hell-bent on pushing it all the way forward. He doesn't want to back out. He wants to make this about race. He wants to make this about black and white. And he wants to show dominance over the white people. That's what he wants to do. It's as simple as that. But I think that we're going to see a lot of these guys across the board, your Daniel Cormiers, your Ariel Helwanis, your fucking Luke Thomas, even Dana, all trying to underplay it. And And there will be an unwritten rule that floats around this kind of political class of people where they say, listen, we gotta defuse this. We cannot have Israel exposed the way he seems hell-bent on doing on himself. We can't do it. And I think they'll fail. And I think this will exponentially grow into something bigger and wider. And as you can see from the coverage on YouTube alone, with these two fighters facing off, I think this is going to explode into a massive narrative that will expose these people for their lies. And at the end of the day, that's a good thing. So I'm all for it. And it's not just this guy. I'll probably go through it in another video, but I just saw Daniel Cormier completely and utterly shill for Israel the other day. It's expected. Cormier has a bias against white fighters. If you watch his commentary and pay a little bit of attention, you will see it. Last weekend, Bo Nickel was fighting Val Woodburn, and Woodburn was being billed as this like dropping bombs, absolute savage, and Bo Nickel was going to get lamped completely out cold. So the fight kicked off. I believe we were like 30 seconds, maybe a minute into it, and the two men exchange punches. Woodburn throwing a massive right, Bo Nickel throwing a massive left, which actually landed and clipped Woodburn, and I believe it was the beginning of the end for him. The commentary team exploded. Daniel Cormier creamed his pants and was like, Woodburn is dropping bombs, Bo Nickel needs to shoot here. Within 9 seconds of that outlandish, ridiculous statement, Woodburn was knocked out cold with 6 or 7 rocket punches to the face. And again, Cormier had to eat his words. You could tell that he wanted it so bad. He wanted Woodburn to take this guy's head off. When we watched Dan Hooker and Jalen Turner, the bias was insane. Jalen Turner is throwing pistons. His kicks are so powerful. Oh my God. Dan Hooker bit down, throwing hard, with a broken orbital bone, with a broken arm. He did it. He beat the great black hype of Jalen Turner. And it was absolutely overt from Cormier, just on that card alone. If I was to go back any further, you'll see it. But in his podcast the other day, talking about the Dricus Plessis and Israel Adesanya situation with Ben Askren, Ben was trying to put across the commonsensical take on it, going, well, he said he wanted to be the real African fighter because he lives and breeds in Africa. And Daniel Cormier wasn't having it. He was interrupting. No. He said this, and he said, I'm the real African. And I don't see this narrative slowing down anytime soon. And these guys are exposing themselves day after day. And it's actually great to see. And I want to jump to the part in the video where Luke Thomas laughs and sneers and dismisses the idea of wanting to protect children that are being trafficked as slaves. Interesting.
What did you think of the UFC leaning so much into politics? This pay-per-view with Trump and Sounds of Freedom. Is that the QAnon movie?
I don't think there's much more to be said about that. He laughs and he kind of jives at the idea. And he believes, I guess, that it's a conspiracy that children are being trafficked. He goes on another big long tangent about politics and Trump, and nothing too surprising there. This encapsulates everything from this guy. He laughs at the idea of children being trafficked into the sex slave industry. He thinks that that's a conspiracy, couldn't be real, because he heard it on far left-leaning news outlets like CNN.
These films are created out of moral panics. They're created out of bogus statistics. They're created out of fear. And with something like Sound of Freedom, it specifically is looking at QAnon concepts of these child trafficking rings that are run by the high-level elites.
Luke Thomas has sneered and laughed at Bryce Mitchell and called him a conspiracy theorist. And this guy is existing within a bubble, within an echo chamber, and it's completely and utterly evident for the majority of people out there who watch this sport. The way he has handled the Dricus and Israel situation, laughing and sneering at racial slurs being thrown at a white fighter, is actually vile. He is the person who's abhorrent here. Not Kobe, not Dricus, not Trump, not Bryce Mitchell. It's him. He's a shill and he's exposing himself, and I will continue to cover this story as long as these fools keep on doing what they're doing. Let me know your thoughts down below and maybe hit subscribe if you can. Cheers.